The American Civil War was a pivotal moment in the nation's history, a conflict that would forever alter the course of the country. It was a conflict rooted in the institution of slavery and the question of states' rights, issues that had been simmering for decades. The outcome of this war would shape the future of the United States, determining its path forward. It would determine whether it remained a united nation or fractured into separate entities, each with its own destiny. The Union, representing the North, fought to preserve the nation's unity and abolish slavery, a cause championed by President Abraham Lincoln. The Confederacy, representing the South, fought to maintain its way of life, deeply intertwined with the institution of slavery and states' rights. The war was a clash of ideologies, economies, and cultures, each side believing fervently in their cause. The stakes of the Civil War were incredibly high, with the very soul of the nation hanging in the balance. A Union victory meant the end of slavery and the preservation of the United States as a single, unified country. A Confederate victory, however, presented a vastly different outcome, one where the nation would be permanently divided. Imagine a scenario where the Confederacy had won the Civil War. Perhaps a decisive Confederate victory at Gettysburg or a successful defense of Vicksburg could have shifted the war's momentum. Foreign intervention on the side of the Confederacy could have tipped the scales. A Confederate victory would have meant the preservation of slavery in the South. It would have likely led to the formation of an independent Confederate nation. This nation would have encompassed the 11 Southern states that seceded from the Union. The consequences of a Confederate victory would have been profound and far-reaching. The United States as we know it would have ceased to exist. It would have been replaced by two separate nations, forever marked by the scars of war and division. In the aftermath of a Confederate victory, the political landscape of North America would have been forever altered. The Confederate States of America would likely have struggled to maintain unity. The very issues of states' rights that fueled secession could have easily resurfaced. The relationship between the Confederate States and the remaining Union would have been tense and fraught with challenges. The issue of escaped slaves seeking refuge in the North could have led to ongoing conflicts and border disputes. The existence of two separate nations on the North American continent would have had significant implications for westward expansion. The balance of power between these nations and their relationships with global powers would have been a defining feature of this alternate history. Section 4. Prosperity and Inequality, the Economic and Social Impact. The economic and social landscapes of both the Confederacy and the remaining Union would have been profoundly impacted by a Confederate victory. The war's outcome would have reshaped the very fabric of American society. The Confederacy, heavily reliant on slave labor, would have faced significant challenges in transitioning to a modern, industrialized economy. The shift from an agrarian to an industrial society would have been fraught with difficulties. The South's dependence on cash crops like cotton would have made it vulnerable to fluctuations in global markets. Any economic downturns could have had devastating effects on the Southern economy. The social structure of the Confederacy, built on the foundation of slavery, would have perpetuated deep-seated inequalities and racial tensions. These societal issues would have likely persisted for generations. The remaining Union, while free from the institution of slavery, would have likely experienced its own set of economic and social challenges. The war's aftermath would have left scars on both sides. The loss of the South's agricultural output would have had ripple effects throughout the Northern economy. The interconnectedness of the two regions meant that the North would also feel the economic strain. Section 5. A World Askew, International Relations in a Confederate Reality. A Confederate victory in the American Civil War would have sent shockwaves across the globe, altering the course of history in ways we can only speculate. European powers, some of whom had been sympathetic to the Confederacy, would have been forced to re-evaluate their relationships with both the Confederate States and the remaining Union. This re-evaluation would have included economic, political, and military considerations. The issue of slavery, while abolished in most European nations, would have continued to be a point of contention in international affairs. European nations would have faced moral and ethical dilemmas in dealing with a nation that still practiced slavery. The Confederacy, seeking legitimacy and economic partners, might have been forced to make concessions on the issue of slavery to secure alliances. These concessions could have included gradual emancipation or other compromises to gain favor with European powers. The global balance of power, already in flux during the mid-19th century, would have been further destabilized by the emergence of a new, independent nation in North America. This new dynamic would have influenced international trade, colonial ambitions, and geopolitical strategies. The ramifications of this event would have reverberated through the 20th century and beyond, potentially altering the outcomes of major global conflicts and shaping the modern world in unforeseen ways.